Those of you who've just seen our interview with Bob Burns are probably chomping at the bit for a chance to check out his museum. While the collection is extensive and too big for us to show every item, Bob showed us these highlights.
This is pretty interesting. It's not a sci-fi or horror genre piece, but it's one of Charlie Chaplin's original film magazine boxes. In fact, this is one he used when he was shooting The Gold Rush. It's just one of my favorite pieces just for what it is. That's Charlie Chaplin stuff. It's funny, this has been converted now, you can see, to 16 millimeter, because they used to use this to shoot commercials and stuff with the 16, but it's one of the original 35 millimeter magazines that they used to use. It was the one that was actually in here originally. This is Bishop from Aliens. This is the android when he gets torn in half by the Queen. And this is one of the Trimmer's worms. But the guys at ADI gave me that, and I figured, well, Bishop needs a home, and the worms eat people. Hey, why not? Put him in there. And he's been there ever since. And they seem to get along okay. It's not bad. This is interesting. This is a thing that Giger made up for the original Alien. This is the space jockey. This is what they call a maquette of what the big set was going to look like. What they would do is they would literally turn this different ways to make this wall look like it was behind it all the time. They only had to build that much of the wall, really. This is from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. A friend of mine, Tommy Sherman, built this for me. It's the same size as the 11-footer from the movie. Unfortunately, Tom passed away before he could get it finished, so some special effects prop guys, friends of mine, are going to finish it for me someday, because it was one thing that Tom always felt real bad about, that he couldn't get it finished. But this is from Fly 2 that Chris Wallace did. It's when the little kid starts growing up very fast and he builds this really, really strange looking helmet. It's only in for a couple of scenes. This is from The Arrival. This is a maquette. Of course, the effects were actually done CGI, but Bob and Denny Skotek gave me that. Here is from Aliens. This is from the sequel. This is one of the heads from that. This is from Alien, and it's the same as this one without this covering on it. This is the one the actor actually wore in the film. But that's that one, and this is the stuntman's head without this covering on it. Know that Giger did a lot of stuff using real skulls and things like that. Now this is what I call my animation case. Most everything in here is from a stop-motion movie. These three different guys here are the different size of the Loch Ness Monster from Seven Faces of Dr. Lowe. One of my rarest pieces back here is the study maker's wall that they made for the King Kong movie in '32. They actually built this wall to build the big one from and the miniature that Kong walks through. This is from a Doug Beswick film called Ticks. This is interesting because it's the Elasmosaurus head and flipper from Kong. It's the thing that comes up out of the water in the cave trying to get Fay Ray that he fights. And here we have drums and fiddles and stuff from George Powell's Tubby the Tuba. This is interesting. Rick Baker gave me this. This is from American Werewolf in London. This is when David Naughton is in the theater and all of a sudden he looks at his hand and he's starting to change. And so what happens here is he looks here and whoa! These little babies pop right through his nails and his skin. Oh, painful, painful. This spaceship right here is from a film called Flicks. It came out on video, didn't even go to the theaters, and then I think it went to the toilet after that, I think. It's a pretty bad movie. But here's the small version of the Nostromo that was hooked to the big refinery set. This is one of the flying subs that was actually used to do the flying scenes from Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. This is the saucer that I worked with Paul Blaisdell. This is the Invasion of the Saucermen saucer. Now in the movie Alien, they wanted to make the space jockey look bigger than it was, so they used children. In fact, I heard it was Ridley Scott's kids. I'm not sure it was or not. Then they scaled down the spacesuits and these kids wore them, and you saw them first climbing up on the space jockey, so it made the space jockey look half again as big. And then of course they would go to the regular actors with the jockey and you couldn't tell how big it was. So they actually used these costumes and scaled them down. Here's the big V ship here, the big model, rather large model. They usually don't make them this big anymore. A lot of detail on it. Now here is Stripe from Gremlins. It's how he ends up in the end of the film when the sun hits him and he turns into a skeleton. Now here's something interesting, combination anyway. The T-1000 from Terminator 2, that was the one that's used in the helicopter, I believe. And the baby, zombie baby from Peter Jackson's Dead Alive. Peter Jackson was over one day and was talking to me. Rick Baker brought him here and he said, I got to go to my car. I've got something I want to show you. And he brought this baby back in and says, you must have this for your museum. And I said, must I? Now these are some of the costumes I have from different movies. The one with the bullet helmet, that's my character, Major Mars, that I did years and years ago. It was a little thing I did at a stage show and we did a little short featurette. And then there is the Flash Gordon shirt from the Flash Gordon serial. Rocky Jones Space Ranger, that you'd have to be older, as old as me to know what that is, I think. Up above is Glenn Strange's Frankenstein boots from Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein that Glenn gave me years ago. And down in front here, we have a lot of different things. There's a dead Drac from Enemy Mine that Chris Walas did. Here's the body from The American Werewolf. It's the one where David Naughton had his arms and head through the stage floor, and then they would wiggle the body around. And this is Naked Lunch. This is one of the mugwumps. This is a panther from Greystoke that Rick did, and I put him by Patrick Swayze from Ghost. And then, of course, we have the full-size werewolf guy. It's so cool. That's when he's complete and he's running down Piccadilly Square doing all the stuff he's doing. They had a guy actually in there wearing it, and his hands would go to the elbows of the werewolf. And it was an cantilever thing. It had wheels on it, almost like a wheelbarrow in the back. And guys would puppet this thing and move it. And the fellow wearing this thing could have his head buried in here, and he would do this with his arms, and it made it look like he was actually crawling and moving along. And we have a helmet from Rocketeer, and a gun from Forbidden Planet, and things like that. These heads down here, the big bug-eyed guys, things Rick Baker did years ago, everybody thinks they were in Star Wars. They really aren't. He did them way before Star Wars, just as a fun thing. And then we have Uncle Creepy and Cousin Eerie, a friend of mine made for me, that are really cool looking. Everybody thinks they came from Disneyland, but they were before Disneyland, from the old EC Comics, of course. A pair of Harry's feet from Harry and the Hendersons. There's a Arnold head, sans hair, for Terminator 2. And a bunch of life casts of different people. There's Sean Connery, Arnold, of course, Lon Chaney Jr., just a lot of folks. This guy is interesting. He's from Arachnophobia. He's the guy that's in that box when they send back the body that the spiders are actually in, is how they get out. That's the body that Chris Walas made on him. Now, this is one of my most interesting pieces that I love, because it was the second movie set I was ever on, which was Destination Moon in 1949. And it's very interesting because it's in relief, so as you pan along it, you can actually see a definition between here and the background with the stars, which are real interesting. And this actually is on wheels, and it actually rolled by the camera. It kept it all in registration, of course. And there was just a spot behind here. Now, we lit it up with fiber optics to show it this way. Here's some interesting things that I kind of put in a case here because they're kind of fragile. One of the Thing's arms from the original Thing. That's a casting out of the original mold. Galactica pistol. This spaceship is from Hangar 18. The guys with wings here are actually from Atlantis: The Lost Continent. These are actually cut out of the film. These look great, but the guys themselves, the actors, the cables were too big. Today you get rid of it with CGI, of course. You couldn't then. Dr. Lau puppet here. This is the big puppet of the serpent that talked to Arthur O'Connell. You can see back here C-3PO's feet. Now, Rick Baker did those for the first movie, and I wasn't aware of that till he gave them to me years ago. I didn't know he actually did the feet for it. The Santa Claus is interesting. Greg Jean did that for the movie 1941. They had to build all of Hollywood Boulevard in miniature for that film. This is interesting. Here's the Zandy from Outer Limits that Wah Chang did. This is the hero puppet. This is one that you could actually raise the head on, and you could, with little monofilaments down the tail, and make the head look back and forth and all that stuff. The buildings behind there, Bob and Denny Skotek did those for Escape from New York. And this one's interesting here, if you can see it. This is one of the Ghidra heads and tail from the original Ghidra from Toho. Here's one of the icons in the museum, actually. The original King Kong. There he is. A little thinner now, but anyway, this is the metal armature of Kong. He still kind of moves. You can actually move the fingers if you want. You can actually get those fingers to move. And they would do them one frame at a time. Click it, fix it again, do another. I don't have the patience for doing that. But this is made out of steel. It's very heavy. The head was sand casted into metal. It's, like I said, next to the time machine, is probably one of the rarest items I have. Now, the very first prop that I ever got, and I was 13 years old at the time, was the cane head from The Wolfman. That's the one Claude Rains bashes Lon Chaney Jr. In fact, Chaney buys it in the beginning of the film, and it's featured all through the movie. And here it is. It's, in reality, made of rubber, because you can see here, and it's still pretty pliable after all these years, because Chaney had to be beat with it, and they didn't really want to hit him with a real cane, I don't think. Now, of the icons we were talking about next to Kong, this has to be the other one, the time machine. I get people coming from all over the world to see this thing. Just for some reason, it seems to be very, very popular, and everybody loves it. It's a beautiful piece of furniture. Now, Rod Taylor here is brand new. I've only had him for a few weeks. Henry Alvarez, who makes the best wax figures in the world, and his wife Andrea made this up for me to be in the time machine. Andrea does all of the hair work. This stuff is punched in one hair at a time, which is phenomenal. This just completes the time machine now. He used to sit here and just be the chair. Now we've got him sitting in it, and it's like one of my absolute favorite things in the world. We did this creature for our Halloween show in 1982. And this is the last casting out of the Ben Chapman mold at Universal, the land creature. And then they destroyed the mold right after this. Now the suit itself, Bill Malone reconstructed this suit, and it's like scale for scale. It's almost 1-to-1. In fact, Ben Chapman, who played the land creature, has been over a couple of times. And he said, is this one of my suits? It feels like it, because it's foam. We did it out of foam. And so Greg Nicotero put it on this dummy for me and made this little environment for him and the whole thing, and there he is. It's so cool. Here is the original gantry for Destination Moon. Now this ship is a redo that Lou Zuderman did for me. The original ship, along with a lot of stuff, got burned in the Bel Air fire at George's home years ago, unfortunately, and he lost everything. So Lou did this, but he had the gantry. What's interesting about this gantry is it's made out of welding rod, and all of the little cross members you see in here are threads glued in one at a time. I mean, that had to be a job. He said it took like 2 months to build this thing. That's the original clock in the title sequence of the Time Machine. You see all these clocks go by, and I thought they went over to England and shot a plate. And Phil Keller said, geez, Bob, they've been half our budget to do that. We couldn't afford that. Now these are matte paintings here from the Time Machine. That's the outside of the Great Hall and the inside of the Great Hall, painted by Bill Brace over at Project Unlimited. These are some of the storyboard art here before they actually had the stuff locked in of what it was going to look like. There's an animation sheet here. A lot of the stuff outside the skylight was all stop motion. So you can see day, night, all this stuff written on here. This is my Time Machine corner, I guess you'd call it here. Now here's an old relic, goes way back, before any of you guys were born. It's the original Martian intelligence from Invaders from Mars. Now here's the Batboat from Batman Returns that Bob and Denny Skotak did. This is the size of the miniature. It was rather large because they had to shoot it in this sewer thing, and so it had to be pretty big to carry focus. These characters here are very interesting. This is just a gnome thing that Rick Baker did just for fun. And there was a bear for a pilot thing he did. I mean, Rick's always messing around with stuff. Even his messing around stuff is always the coolest stuff you've ever seen. That's the stuff he's just playing with. Now, Chris Walas is such a talented guy. He's the guy that designed the Gremlins. Here are original designs he did here for Gizmo. See, it goes all the way over till the final one you see is the Gizmo they end up using. But this shows you some of the early designs that people have to go through to do these things. Now here's more of Chris Walas' stuff. Over here, we have different concepts for the Fly that he did. You can see some gizmos behind. These dogs are for a whiskey commercial in Japan yet, which is kind of interesting. These are just different early designs of all kinds of monsters and things. Here's that poor mutated dog from Fly 2 that everybody cries when you see that poor thing. There was the original size of the Gremlins they were going to be, but they were just too small. You couldn't put anything in them at all, so they decided not to use that size. Here's Fly 2. There's an actual Fly 2 head. And this is interesting from Naked Lunch. He made it look a little like Burroughs, the guy that wrote the thing. Now here's a thing from one of my very favorite films, The Day the Earth Stood Still. This is the original flying saucer that they used. It's used in 2 scenes in the film that I'm aware of. One where Klaatu was walking out of the saucer, they did a hanging miniature with it, had it in front of the camera, and he was like a quarter of a mile away. Probably wasn't even him, I'm sure, walking down the ramp. Then Fox took it, because he used to reuse props all the time, cut the bottom off because it used to be flat, added this ring of lights on here and this little partition on here, and used it in a voyage to the bottom of the sea. Now here's some just various props. Here's Lily Munster's dress from the Munsters, or one of her dresses. She had many, I'm sure. This is actually not from the actual film of The Creature from the Black Lagoon. A friend made this up. It's just kind of cool. Now this airplane, the only remaining prop as far as we know of from War of the Worlds. This is the airplane when it crashes and you see the saucer hover over the top of it. Now the original War of the Worlds saucers, which are made of copper, were given to a copper drive in the 50s, to a Boy Scout copper drive, and they melted them down, if you can believe that. So they don't exist. Now Greg Jean made this one for the TV series that was shot in Canada, the War of the World TV series. It's made off the blueprint, so it's the same size, only this is made out of fiberglass, where the other one was actually made out of copper. Here's some helmets. This is Ripley's helmet from Alien, her backpack. Behind you can see Rollerball, that's one of the helmets there, one of the backpacks from Alien. This is from X-15, this helmet. This is Robot Monster, everybody's favorite bad movie. This is Outland. We have Andromeda Strain, and one of the ones from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Chris Walas did Gremlins. He had to come up with a radio-controlled car for Gizmo to drive in. And here's what they came up with. It's a real, honest-to-goodness radio-controlled car. And then, of course, later on, they put out a toy. They didn't have the rights to this car, but if you notice, the paint and all the decal stuff on it, the detailing looks very much like it. So they got away with it. And unless you know this, you probably think that is the car. You wouldn't have any idea. Now, Terminator 2 is one of my favorite movies. Jim Cameron, of course, did it, and through his good gracious, I ended up with a thing like this. the original Hunter Killer tank. It was so big we had to disassemble it to get it in here. And then down here we have another Chris Wallace thing. It's arachnophobia. These are all the different like mechanical spiders they had to use. They had to do this big one for close-ups because the little guy just wasn't good enough for close-ups. You couldn't get the detail in it. This is the armature actually that this was over. And then of course we have the old guy. He's the guy sitting with his wife on the couch, and the reason they had to make a thing of him is the spider climbs out of his nose. And the actor wasn't real thrilled about having a real spider climb out of his nose. Here's one of my favorite pieces. It's from Aliens, but it was used again in Alien 4 or Resurrection. Here's stuff from a lot of different movies. We have Mant here from Matinee. That's the big ant that climbs up the side of the building that Rick Baker did. We have from Terminator 2, they call him Pizza Face, kind of obvious I think. It's where Arnold gets up on the truck and fires the Uzi through there and blows him apart. Down here we have Chris Wallace's Fly 2. This was the thing that was actually in the cocoon. You barely even saw this in the film because it was inside of a cocoon. This spaceship is very interesting. It was a thing called Night of the Creeps, and it was only used in the movie for about 10-15 seconds, and then it blows up. Now, I loaned it to Paramount, and they used it in a Deep Space Nine and a Next Generation show, and you saw more of it than you did here in that film it was made for. Now, here's the Sulaco from Aliens. It's actually only built on one side because they only shot it from one side. And we have Jack back here, of course, from American Werewolf. That's how he appeared in the theater in the very end of the movie. Now here's some stuff from Aliens. This is the drop ship, and they call this the hero ship because it has the pilots and everybody inside. The hero ship means has all of the pieces on it. Everything is on it. This is one of the pistols from Alien, the first film. It's a model off of a real gun, and these are pretty heavy. These poor guys in these suits, I mean, those helmets are heavy. I tried to put on those things, and I don't know how the actors wore these things as much as they did because they were heavy devils, I'll tell you. Now this is the nose of the Narcissus from Alien, and they back projected in these windows the people sitting in there walking around and doing things, and this was made strictly for one shot in the film. Now here's stuff from Alien and Aliens, it's both. These are face huggers here. This is the one that was actually on Kane's face in the film. You can see there was an air bladder that used to be hooked on here at one time, and that's what made it pulsate and do its thing. This is actually built over a garden glove, and it's the one that was in the egg that flies up at Kane in there. The guy was just down inside the egg and just flew it up. This is the one that gets on Sigourney Weaver from Aliens. You can see it's a much bigger face hugger. This is from Aliens. This is the one that was in the gal inside the building, the complex, and saying, please kill me, and it's pretty cool. It still kind of moves a little bit. Feed me, feed me. Chris Wallace made this wonderful little piece. This is Dragon Slayer, which I still think is the best dragon design ever done. This is like the hand puppet that he did that nudges those dead babies in the film. And here's a little maquette that he did of it. They needed something just to put on film to test it, and he sculpted this, I think, like in a couple of days. He did this really fast, but it looks really neat. Now these are interesting. Here's some of Rick Baker's work here. There's the full-size baby head, or an oversized, I should say, from It's Alive. These are both from American Werewolf in London, where David Naughton has that horrible nightmare and they come in cutting up everybody. Those are great faces. And just a bunch of different heads and masks I've got here from different movies, all kinds of things. Well, the chimp on the left up there, that was made by Rick for Greystoke. That was a test dummy. It all is cable controlled. They never used it in the film. And the other gorilla head, that's Sydney, the gorilla's stunt head from The Incredible Shrinking Woman. Now this is a guy you'll recognize, I'm pretty sure, from the cantina scene in Star Wars. He's the guy that was kind of sitting there scratching his head, and it looks like he's got a sausage in his mouth. Only I think that is his mouth, I'm not sure. Jack Pierce gave me this around 1963. This was made for Lon Chaney Jr. and The Mummy's Curse, and that was around 1944. And as far as we know, that's the only piece that survived of his work.
So there's your first peek into Bob's basement. Right now, Bob is looking into putting his collection on display for the public, so one day others will be able to enjoy it as much as he does.